Hey everybody, welcome back to EMS1 News and Insider Analysis. Ed Bauter and Dan Schwester here from the Overrun, and today we're going to talk about a story from New Mexico, where now we have a lawsuit where a patient attempted suicide, and EMS got to him, decided that the patient was agonal, and then did not resuscitate him. The EMS that's involved, the paramedics in Santa Fe, are now being sued. Danny, what do we think about this?
Well, the story is pretty disturbing. From the account in EMS1, it seems as though this patient sustained a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Afterwards, EMS got on scene, police got on scene, and they appeared to think that he was dead or in the process of actively dying, and that resuscitating him would not be appropriate. There were some points that came out in the complaint that kind of were a little kind of shocking to me.
We should point out real quick, before we get too far into it, the patient is still alive. The patient lived
Yes.
and is still alive. He is incapacitated as a result of his injuries, but just so we're clear.
Yes. Good point. Good point to that. But the patient was, they stated that the patient was breathing agonally about one every 20 to 30 seconds. However, police body cam video showed that that wasn't true. Also, a monitor was at the scene. It was not placed on the patient. There was no vital signs. Because of the body cams, the police officers, the paramedics were on scene for about 30 seconds looking at the patient and then decided that he wasn't survivable and packed their things up. A lot of lessons to be taken from this. We all do pronouncements, we all do death notifications, and we've all seen non-survivable injuries, but that does not take away our responsibility to do the right thing for a patient. And if the allegations here are true, it's a pretty disturbing breach of trust, because they didn't take care of this patient. They didn't even do the basics of an exam on the patient. And this patient survived despite not getting any care, eventually getting taken to the hospital and airlifted to another hospital. The patient is blind and does have some brain damage. And the lawsuit is alleging that that may not have happened if the paramedics had treated him appropriately when first on scene.
And this is one of those events where we've all gone on scene. We've all had obvious deaths, and it's never particularly easy. There's a lot to talk about as far as burnout is concerned. We don't necessarily know what time the medics were dispatched to this, but we do know that it took too much time. There is documentation from the police body cams that the patient was breathing. They actually informed the family that the patient was breathing through this. And again, not to be kind of, Big Brother is watching, but we are on camera, which shouldn't be a reason to do the right thing. We should be doing the right thing one way or the other. But it sounds like we've reported on stories previously where, you had providers that were given poor direction by their medical director. And that's not what happened here. What happened here is the medics got on scene, they made a decision, and then they didn't treat the patient who survived. And the worst part about it is that it seems that they had convinced themselves that the patient was moribund from the beginning, and then used the patient's assessment to fill their bias that this patient was already moribund or expired. That's very difficult as a culture to try to address, but it's something that's very important for all of us. When we go on to a scene, we have to know we're there for that patient. We're there for that patient's family. In this setting, the patient's family was put outside the room and held back by the police department while they were telling the family that the patient was still alive and breathing. And it's not acceptable. It's not something that we can do. Obviously, we don't want anyone to die in the field. We don't want any sort of lawsuits to come forward. But this is the environment we're living in now, where providers are going to start to be held accountable for the things they do and do not do. There's plenty of things that we can talk about conversations that are had off air, or off the record, or behind closed doors and in, smoky conference rooms or whatever. But the reality exists that when you get to a patient, you have to treat the patient. Even if you think that this patient is bound to expire, you have to treat them to get them to the hospital. There are times where we're going to lose that battle, but the important thing in a lot of settings is having that battle. So when you're out in the field, treat the patients, and there's an anecdote of treat them as if they're your own family, I guess, provided you like your family. But you want to make sure that you're actually treating the patients appropriately and getting them to the proper care. What do you guys think? Have you run into these situations? Have you read any more about them? Let us know. Check us out on YouTube and check us out on overrunems.com. And for EMS1 Insider Analysis, Ed Bauter and Dan Schwester from the Overrun. We'll talk to you next time.